I like that.
I'm stealing that term. Creator
There you
enablement.
go, creator enablement. IP starting today. Trademark. I think that is the way that you diversify risk. Because
And how do I do it in a way that honors the investment of blood, sweat, and tears?
Are we considered geriatric millennials? Is that what we
You know what? Legacy building mode, right? Like what?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Marketing Adjacent. I'm Mike Grimberg. This is Gario Harrison, your fellow geriatric millennials. That was my favorite line from that intro, by the way. We wanted to chat a little bit about AI because it's all everybody talks about today anyway, so why the heck not us? I saw an interesting article in Wired yesterday, I think it was, popped into my feed. And it was about, I don't know the guy that wrote it. Never heard of him before, but he's a journalist that had a viral piece called, I should have written it down. It's Ghosts something. Anyway, I'll find it later. We can scroll through it. But the point is he had a viral piece and he was interested in AI, and he had AI help him. GPT-3, I believe, helped him write this piece. This was a couple of years ago. And the whole article goes on, it's sort of his reflection on, is AI writing for from a communications and literature perspective a good thing? And really something I've been wrestling with, and Gario, you and I have talked about a number of times in the past, both publicly and privately, is like, just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I know you have a really interesting way that you look at using AI as a thought partner, an ideation partner. And I think that really, for me, highlighted and connected to this article. And that's where I wanted to go with this. So again, maybe tell me a little bit, and maybe your ideas have even changed in the last week or so since we last talked about this. But like, how are you currently using AI as a thought partner? Give as much detail as you want, really.
Yeah. My thinking has evolved slightly on it, right? So the two parts of this article that got me excited for this conversation today. The first was, there's the camp of the purist writer, right? Like the folks that are saying, our art is our art, and we can't, like, these tools are being trained on our intellectual property. It is pretending to be us. It's not human, etc. There are some colorful lines that he quoted when he reached out to his writer friends. Well, obviously, because you're a writer, so it's going to be witty. It's going to be sharp. And then the other side is him wrestling with this idea of that thought partner, right? And the example that from the article that he gives, and we can throw the link in the comments after, so folks can check it out too, is he had a friend from college, I believe, who passed away of cancer, and he was writing a
It was
story.
his sister.
Sister, yes, his sister. And he was writing a short story about it. And there was a line that he was struggling to put some thoughts around and put into words. And he kept going back to the AI and saying, how do I say this differently? And honestly, like the line that he wrote, um, or that got produced and ended up making it into the article, like I thought it was like poetic, right? Um, so when you zoom out and you take a step back, there's three things that stand out because of that.
Well, should we?
One,
You want me to read that line? I have it pulled up, by the way.
oh yeah, go ahead.
So let me share this too. I don't know if people can see it, but the line that GPT-3 came up with
Mhm.
is, we were driving home from Clark Beach and we were stopped at a red light and she took my hand and held it. This is the hand she held, the hand I write with, the hand I am writing this with.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. And he
Oh
even says that too in his account of this experience.
yeah. So oh man, even just thinking about it, I'm like, that's such a powerful sentence. But the things that are stood out from this whole article is, um, one, it's a human experience that led to the story that he was being told, right? So that's the first thing. Like, um, it wasn't just a blank prompt, make this up. It was, here's my lived experience, and I'm trying to figure out how to say it in a way that it appeals to an audience, right? The second thing was, it wasn't a one and done. Like this was literally a thought partner. He prompted it and wasn't quite right, and then prompted it again, wasn't quite right, prompted it again, it nailed this sentence, and it evoked an emotion that essentially got him to say, "Yep, this is the one," right? And then the last piece that's standing out here is, this is the worst the technology is ever going to be, right? So it will continue to evolve and continue to get better. And what does that mean for a world that we live in where um, synthetic content is being produced? Do we do we need to have labels put on things? The fact that, yes, it was written by AI, but this was his lived experience that he was talking about. Um, is there a benefit to using the tool to be efficient so more of those ideas and lived experience can live in the public domain and we can all benefit from it? Um, and yeah, like if we're being honest, there is things that are going to get displaced. And I don't know if you remember this. You would last year, I think we were chatting. You used the analogy of the horse to explain.
Which he talked about in this article too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you want to give that like that that uh that framing of AI, um,
Yeah, and
and go from there.
I don't know. I haven't thought about it in a little while. I think my opinion maybe has changed a little bit, but I think the framing of it generally is that there's always displacement with technological innovation, right?
Mhm,
When and it all even starts with like how, especially since we're talking marketing adjacent here, like how technology is described, right? I mean, Henry Ford, you called it a horseless carriage, if we want to talk
mhm,
category
mhm,
design, right? So it's that's what the car was to the horse and carriage. And, it took a while. I don't remember. I remember reading, I think it was maybe 20 or 30 years before like horses and carriage drivers went out of business, if you will.
mhm.
Um, but what we're seeing now is the rate of innovation has increased so rapidly that that's not even like, it's an interesting example in my mind, but it's not really the right example because I think you can use it to illustrate it,
Mhm.
but this is not going to be a 30-year thing. I mean, we're already seeing impacts of this in certain industries. So yeah, I don't, I think I like it because it's an example everybody knows. I think everyone's heard the phrase and whatnot and the analogy, but I actually don't think it's a valid one for what we're talking about.
Okay.
Um,
What would
and
you
I
what
think
would you say
it's,
what would you say one is? Do you have a new one that you're wrestling with?
I don't know because I think part of the problem is I wasn't alive back then, right? So I don't have the lived experience of like, in my mind, that doesn't seem like an existential type threat to life as we know it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a it's a change, a big one, right? I mean, distance became less of an issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a clear, I think, other than job displacement. Well, I mean, that's not true. There were other things, deaths increased. I mean, people were getting run over and, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I didn't live that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the fact that this technology is getting to the heart of what it means to be human, I think
Mm-hmm.
is the big difference. And I don't know that an adequate analogy out there for it. I mean, for me, that's the reason why I struggle with it so much. And I mean, you and I talk about it, like we both use it.
Yeah.
I've had, we use a product called Summarize to help summarize podcast episodes as drafts, and we edit them and all that kind of stuff, and some social content for ourselves, and that kind of thing. So we have AI in processes. It's not sitting there on its own just doing the work for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, I have never used AI yet to this day for expressing my own ideas in writing, when
Mm-hmm.
writing is the input. When video is the input, different story. I have used it as a way to help summarize and create some social content, but I'll still edit it at the end pretty heavily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but not a single thing that started out as writing I have used AI for. I've used it for ideation. I think like you, and this is why I wanted to go to the thought partner analogy that or use case that you've used, because I think it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting way to think about it. But I have like nothing that I post on LinkedIn that's writing only
Mm-hmm.
has had AI input, because I've yet to find it do it well enough where it adds enough value for me.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I think it can, in the instances where I've seen it get close, yes, it speeds things up, but part of the value in writing is the rigor and the thought process of creating the writing and the story, which you lose. So it's these
Right.
intangibles where, yeah, sure, I can put out more content that probably sounds fairly closely to me, especially if, if I go and maybe sign up for Jasper or something where I can do voice
Mm-hmm.
and tone easier, things like that. Sure. But I feel like I lose a lot of the intangibles of the writing process.
Mm-hmm.
This is where this guy seems to struggle with too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even then in this article, it talks about like, I wouldn't call it's not a hallucination, I don't think, but he even talked about at the end, like this is not his lived experience. Like this line, while it's powerful,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good piece of writing. He's like, that's not really me and my sister. We were never that sentimental. Like he talks about
Right.
that in this piece. So it's not really him. It's not real. And
Right.
that's the thing that I like, existentially, I think, struggle with is this the way that we should be using this tool? And that's where,
Right.
again, that's why I asked you the question of like, tell people about your idea of this as a thought partner, because that's where I think it has a ton of value to be extracted.
Well, let me do this. I'll break down kind of there's two kind of buckets that I use. I use it as thought partner for. There is the personal side, and then there is like work, right? For work, one of our products, is helping thought leaders or executives get their ideas out. You know, content creation, thought leadership, business goals, all that good stuff. Um, and the way we use it on the front end is to create structure around content, right? which then provides the sequence of the interview questions that we then ask, which then in turn results in the content that's written, which then obviously gets published and so on. So it doesn't remove the human from the process, but um, it does make it more efficient, right? So we're able to spend more time on the human side and less time on the um, kind of the blocking and tackling, right? Because we also use AI to run through once it's written um, for editing, right? Proofreading. So it ends up becoming really makes the process of writing more efficient. And to be honest, and I can say this here, like we essentially reverse engineered Harvard Business Review when they take a subject matter expert and turn it into content for HBR, and reverse engineered what are the editors doing and which parts of this can be automated or made more efficient with AI, and which parts are have to be uniquely human. But it's that taking someone's lived experience, ideas, insights that they have. And we have frameworks. We have like a ton of frameworks that we use. StoryBrand is one for organizing or structuring stories. We have the hero's journey. We have the story of us. Like this, that's just three examples where we say, okay, this is what the topic is going to be around because this is what the business goals are. Let's come up with some narrative frameworks and structures that are used to guide the interview process. But the AI is not writing for us, right? That would be um, disingenuous, and it would be more of the same. And I think that's the problem that as marketers we have to solve for, because there's a lot of stuff out there that you can go, oh yeah, AI wrote that, right? It's now an insult. Hey, you sound like AI wrote that, right? Like, and I love that. That's now a jab, right?
But
On
see,
the
and that's exactly my point, right? Is the fact, like, I feel like there's this disconnect between what these tech companies are putting out and trying to do and what the public actually wants. The fact that, and again, I'm not surprised by it whatsoever. I think, again, it's because it's an existential question. It's like, what is it to be human? Well, if this thing can pretend to be human, why do we need humans?
right.
Right. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt because I know
No.
you're finishing your thought, but
That's a good point. And I can share like in relation to that how I use. So I journal a lot, right? And I journal with the intention of when I'm not here, will my son have information and just ideas in a way that I've thought about things um, uh, in the world, like learn about his dad, right? Um, and I'm going through the process right now of capturing some of that information from my parents, right, through audio. But what I use ChatGPT for is like if I'm stuck and I'm looking at a journal prompt and I'm saying, hey, you prime it by going like, here's the intention that I'm trying to accomplish. This thing happened. Um, my son, I want him to review this and make sense of this decision, 20 years from now. What questions should I answer to make sure that that's there, right? And I might say, give me, you know, 20 questions that he might have about this decision. And he'll give me the 20 questions. That's just a frame. Then I'm sitting down and going, all right, let me answer this, right? Um, in a way that makes sense uh, to him. And then when I'm done, I run it through proof for edit and grammar, not changing anything because I'm just writing freeform at that point. And then that gets published, and I use day one as my like note capturing thing, and then I print it out. But now that's a way more efficient way of doing that than me sitting down looking at the blank page going like, or having a prompt that says, because it used to give me prompts like, what are you grateful for today? And I'm like, okay, well, I can sit there and look at the blank page and try to figure that out. Or I can have that thought partner going like, why am I even journaling? What's the outcome I'm trying to get? Think about it 20 years out and tell me what sort of questions I should be answering today. And having it like again be that thought partner. And I'll do that conversation using ChatGPT Whisper Sync on a walk, right? Just to get the juices flowing. And then I get back to my desk. And before I hop onto Peloton, I'm actually like just answering the questions that it gave me coming out of that walk, right? Because I'm out there in nature and I'm thinking. Um, so it's one of these things where like if you think about it as you're essentially having a conversation with yourself because you're guiding what the AI is doing. It changes your relationship with the technology, and I think that that's the problem that people are struggling with it because it's like you and I nerd out over it. It's technology, right? So it's like, okay, how can we leverage this thing? But a lot of folks are trying to use it as a metaphor with something that they already know, right? Same thing with social media. The metaphor people had was broadcast television. So therefore they went, we're going to use it as a broadcast tool. Well, you and I know it's essentially relationships at scale. Like I like the way that you frame it. That's what it is. So if you look at it through that lens, now you value it very differently. But if your sole lens is, TV and scheduled TV at that point and the largest audience ever versus, yeah, how do we asynchronously communicate? You view it very differently. And I think we're going through that process as a globe right now, trying to figure out what's the right metaphor for AI. And I don't think they've done a really good job of messaging that yet.
No, I agree with you. I think part of it is this is like to a certain extent, like the blind leading the blind, because
Okay.
I don't think at least I don't, I might be wrong, but I don't know that the creators of it even know as of right now, at least the mass market product. Like I'm not talking like the vertical models that are for, you know, biotech research or whatever, or financial stuff. Like that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But these general purpose based models, I don't know that even their creators really know and understand what the heck they've created yet or what the real value really is. Right. Because
Right.
even if you look at demos, like oh, I can do this cool thing. I can do this other cool thing. It's very feature heavy,
Mm-hmm.
but again, this existential question that exists about, well, because it really is like making people think like, what I haven't I, I haven't heard this many existential conversations in public about what the heck does it mean to be human ever
Yeah.
until the last year, right?
Right.
I never thought I'd be the one having that conversation either. So there's that. Um, so I think that's a big part of it is I don't think we know. And I don't think we're going to know the impacts for a while. My opinion of it is for a long while been it's being used in the wrong ways. Like, and again, this is why I like your thought partner analogy. And actually, it reminds me of there's an episode series of Planet Money of how they leveraged AI to build an entire episode from start to
Oh,
finish.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
We should
and
find that and throw that in there.
one of it was they had ChatGPT come up with the interview questions, and they were very thoughtful, and people were surprised that it happened. Like so, it's very similar to what
Mm-hmm.
you're describing is coming up with the right questions to get the content that's needed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they went much further. They created, synthetic voices and all this kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
and scripts and et cetera, et cetera. Um, but that baseline of they were using it as a thought partner,
Mm-hmm.
and I've that was a very core piece. So I really like that. I think the other piece from this article that again goes back to this kind of existential question a little bit, which is, we can use it to create content. Like that's what, like completely,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than a thought partner, it's a synthetic content generator. Like there's, there's that company Sudowrite that can create entire books. And obviously it's not like a one prompt thing and the whole book's done, but
Right.
that's kind of the, hey, you can create a whole 200-page book in a couple of days. Like that's crazy. And, in
Right.
this article, this guy talks about, kind of wrestling with the ideas of, well, is it a bad thing to democratize literature? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave the example of a mom that didn't like the books that existed out there for her. I forget the age of the son, but and she went and used this tool to create her own story that she felt good about sharing with her son.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's an interesting question because it could get into all sorts of things like, questions of um, representation, right? Like there's all this stuff about, I can't speak to it per se, but there's not enough representation of other races, ethnicities, etc., out there in all forms of media. So does this help with that?
Mm-hmm.
Or does it introduce other biases and all that stuff because that exists in the model and all that? Like there's all these interesting questions that I don't like. Again, this writer's conclusion is no, let's keep the writers writing and it's not a good idea. At least I'm summarizing here. It's not a good idea to use these tools for communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at a high level, I would tend to agree. Like, I don't know that I think the day where the AI writes like an entire email to the client for me,
Mm-hmm.
I think is the day that I quit what I'm doing. I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe that's the wrong way to
yeah.
think about it, because not because like it's taking over my job, but because at that point if we can't communicate as humans, like human to human, and it's my email going to somebody and then their email bot responds to me, and it's like, what's the
Right.
point? Like that to me, that's the part I struggle with is I can see it used as a thought partner to help with communication,
Mm-hmm.
but to replace the human in the communication, that seems like a death spiral, if you will.
Yeah. I think I'm definitely with you there, and I think how I landed on the thought partner um, mental model was I was trying to figure out which technology in history is it most like, right? And I went back to the internet and all the things, and I think it was um, the dude that wrote *Sapien*. He had a talk, and he was talking about AI hacking the human condition and all that. And a couple dots connected when I read that article. It was there's the Gutenberg press. Before Gutenberg press, there were these elites that only they had knowledge, and what they thought got translated into what everybody else understood and thought, right? And then the Gutenberg press came out, and all of a sudden, ideas were democratized through the written word, right? And it was this explosion of ideas. And I would imagine it was pretty wild at that time, right? And then the book got normalized. And it was okay, well, these are ideas that are been, vetted, and there was um a a sense of uh finiteness of a book that's written. This is a clear idea. And then the internet came about and blogs and same thing, same explosion of ideas, wild west. Then journalism got layered on top of it. And there are these rules around what good journalism looks like and fact checking and all that. Then social media came about and blew that all up. And then, we start to get to a point where the finiteness of a book came back, but in audio form. So now we're democratizing ideas again through a conversation, right? It's you're working out, you're at the gym, you're in the grocery stores, and so on. People that don't have the luxury of sitting down and reading a book for hours on end now can still have the information to have the conversation that's there with anybody that's read the book. And I think now we're going through a similar thing where it's like, okay, I get to contribute. Someone that would not normally be able to contribute to the conversation, having their voice heard. And I think there's this, you said, like this existential conversation around, well, what does that mean for the world and society? And I think we're just going to have to wrestle with it, but the genie's not going back into the box, right? And I think the net result is going to be good, but it's going to be painful, and we're going to have more conversations like this. But again, this guy's I'm going to assume he's at least a geriatric millennial, right? Where like he's lived through the world in one state. Our kids, like, they're growing up in the age of AI. This is going to be normal for them. They're going to be able to suss out, what's real, what's not real, whose idea is this versus not. They're going to be able to do that, and they're going to find their own style, right? Like I have it right, like this artist over here, but I have to know who that artist is to some degree to know that it's someone that I want representing who I am as an individual. So I feel like we're gonna see this explosion of more ideas and more content being put out, but over time it's going to be refined to the individual and their identity. And that, when we get there, I think it's going to be a net positive. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Great perspective. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, we'll figure it out. And I think the more people play around with it and test it and understand it, I think the more we're going to get to the real use cases. That add, I mean, and some of the value is going to be, I think, very much intangible. Like, I think a lot of, like, some of it is going to be things like bringing your thoughts out of your subconscious, if you will, right? Talking to yourself, like you said, things like that. So I think that's a good place to stop. What do you think?
Perfect.
All right, everybody.
Land
the plane. Very roughly, I think. Thanks for listening. Leave us a review, comment, Spotify, iTunes, etc. Give us a comment where on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you're watching and listening to this. And we will see you all next week.
I feel like we should do more of these.